Welcome once again here on the Regional Radio Sports Network. My name is Paul Cowdery, President and Founder of Regional Radio Sports. Glad that you can join us here as we get the school year of 25-26 underway. Glad to have my good friend Scott Cooper, the men's basketball coach and athletic director here at Indiana University in South Bend, Indiana. Glad to have Coop with here as we start our journey through the 25-26 school year. Coop, I know this for you, number 13 as the varsity basketball coach, number 3 as an athletic director. But you know what we're going to do to start? We're going to go back into the time machine. Are you ready for this? Are you ready for this?
Bring it on.
All right. First of all, let's talk about the days as an athlete. For our listening audience today, they don't understand how you got to where you're at. So let's get everybody up to date from those incredible and thrilling days of yesteryear and how you got to where you're at right now.
So I grew up in a small town in Worcester, Ohio, just outside of Akron. I, was very fortunate to, grow up in a family where my dad was the athletic director and had access to it, and obviously I'm a bigger guy, and a lot of coaches, a lot of people took an interest in me early on and, helped me develop all the way from youth basketball to Mr. Boyle, who was my elementary school basketball coach, and whatever grades those were, to, all the way through junior high and up and through high school. And, not just my head coaches, but my assistant coaches, a guy named Doug DeVault, who went on to be a very successful high school football coach, and Mike McCurry, who was also a lot of football coaches in Ohio in the 90s.
It's a good football state.
Yeah, you could do worse, that's for sure. But by the way, national champs. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that as an IU employee, but yeah, go Buckeyes. No, I was very fortunate to have a lot of people who took an interest in me and probably had more resources because of my access to, the facilities and, through my family and things like that. So I was lucky enough to be recruited by a whole lot of schools, primarily at the Division II, Division III level, and chose to go to a place called Allegheny College, where I was a very mediocre athlete, but we won a lot, especially my first couple of years there, made NCAA tournament, and then in my junior year, first game of the season, I messed up my knee, was able to play a few more games, but really kind of ended my season, and just, like any athlete, wanted to stay around it as best as I could. I had to have that taken away. At the time, especially the type of injury I had was, basically a year and a half, 2-year thing. So I did what I could to help out on the court and things like that, and we'll call it coaching for lack of a better term. And then when I graduated college, I was going to go be an actuary and, do some of that stuff. And my coach calls me up one day and says, hey, there's this, graduate assistant position at this little Division III school called Alfred University in New York. And, you can make $1,500 a year and have your graduate school paid for. And actually, I think $1,500 was in the second year. I think I got $1,000 the first year. You get your grad school paid for, and instead of going into a lucrative career that paid something like $70,000 a year out of school in the early 2000s, I decided to take the one that paid $1,000 a year.
And this is for a guy who specializes in numbers.
Yeah, well, I majored in mathematics and minored in psychology.
Okay, so something had to draw you back into the coaching thing.
I think it was just that I wasn't ready at that point. I'd thought about coaching and things like that, but at that point, I definitely wasn't ready to leave the game behind. It had done so much for me that I, wasn't ready for it to not be a part of my life in a major way. And then once I got into it, I realized it was for me, I joke about the salary all the time, even though it's true. But the truth is I've never once regretted any decision I've made on that path. And, most of the best things in my life, I have come because of basketball. And, luckily I'm now in a position to help other people do the same, through the sport.
When you think about all the things that you went through, and I believe those are all God-defined appointments. I really believe that. Where is college athletes and athletics going to be 5 years from now? So let's go back and talk about some of the things that were cornerstones for you in those early stages. And are they still cornerstones for you today? And let's move this into the future.
Yeah, that's a great question. When I started out, it was like I just talked about it. It was all about the transformational process, right? And that's important. I think anytime you're talking about whether it's high school athletics, college athletics, or whatever else, that you should be an extension of the educational, mission of wherever you're at, and whether it's your high school, your college, your youth team, whatever it happens to be, is that you're trying to prepare people for the next phases of their lives. I don't think that's completely gone, But what has happened is the way that television, in particular football, has come into college athletics, and it has accelerated a more transactional process. And now, that athletes have value the same way that professional athletes do. That college athletes are now making their universities millions and millions of dollars. And listen, I completely agree that they are entitled to some cut of that. This isn't about whether or not they are or not. But what it's done to that process is it's completely made those of us that got into the coaching for that transformational process kind of reevaluate how we do things. And that's an ongoing thing. I don't think that's something that's, like you said, clearly defined. So to sit here and say what that's going to look like 5 years from now, I don't think anybody really knows. And I think it's driven a lot of really good coaches and really good athletic administrators out of the business because that's not why they got into it at all. So I still think that there's a place for the transformational process and all that stuff in there, but we've got to reevaluate what that looks like now. And I've said this 100 times on 100 different ways that there are no more dangerous words in the English language than that's how we've always done it. And if we continue to try to operate how we always have, we're going to get left behind and we're not going to be able to do the things that we got into this business to do.
So you had to have a coach along the way that reached deep into the recesses of your soul or to your heart. And in your own mind's eye, you've said, I want to have the impact in another human being's life like this coach had in my life. Now, obviously, we could say your dad, because that's a cornerstone, but someone outside your dad who may have been that guy, or he may have been a teacher or somewhere along the line that said, wow, this guy has taught me things. He has reached down deep in my soul, and things are changed forever, and I want to be that same kind of guy or gal. Who is it?
Yeah, I think part of the reason I've been so fortunate in this business is because I've had so many of those people.
You've had a lot.
Yeah, and I mentioned like Keith Boyle, who was my elementary school basketball coach. He was the first one that I can remember like giving me confidence, like, hey, you could be good at this. Like, hey, I was a gangly fourth grader or whatever.
Yeah.
Who was taller and uncoordinated than everybody else. And like, hey, this could be something you do if you you could have some success with if you work at it. And he did it in a way that made it fun. Which at that age is more important than anything, right? So all of a sudden I had something that was just fun for me, and like I said, I mentioned, so many coaches growing up that I remember in 7th grade, I was 6'2" or whatever the heck I was.
That's pretty tall at that
age. Yeah, and trying out for the basketball team for the first time and wondering if I was ever going to make it. And you're 6'2" in the 7th grade, like you're probably a sure thing,
yeah.
Right? But you don't know that in life. And
could you walk and chew gum at the same time?
Probably not.
Okay.
And you know what? That's even at this point in my life, that's still a little bit of a task. But yeah, I mean, it's I my 7th and 8th grade basketball coaches, Mike Zerker and Mike Snowbarger were great in that too, and just building my confidence and things like that. And then when I got to high school, that's where it really took off. I really had people who took an interest in me. My varsity basketball coach, Mark Albert Sr., and then so many of my assistant coaches. There's too many to list here, but like I said, Doug DeVault and Mike McCreary are two that really stuck out to me. That just went out of their way to make sure I had access to everything. They'd come into the weight room with me during the summers, and a lot of times I was the only one in there with them. And they'd work with me, and they'd open up the gym for me when I wasn't able to sneak my dad's keys off his rack in ways that I wasn't supposed to, and things like that. But just so many people, along the way that really helped me grow as a person, build confidence in myself, and all the great things that come with being an athlete. I think that list, I'm sure I'm leaving people out that are more than that. There are plenty more that have had a huge impact on me along the way.
You mentioned the word fun. As a college coach, I've been a head college coach now for 13 years. You find yourself in a very unique situation because what may be fun for you versus the athlete, it could have one of those, as my buddy Donnie Smith used to say. He used to call me zero fun, sir, to the reference to the movie Remember the Titans. So how do you make things fun for athletes today in today's entitled society of kids, which have had, in most cases, almost everything they've ever wanted in their lives? Now that's a blanket statement. That's not true for everyone. But how do you still make it fun for athletes today as a college coach?
Well, first thing, you work at a place like IUSB where, the program has a chance to be impactful on their lives, right? Like, we get so many students here who are first-generation college students who didn't have, a lot of the things you're talking about, right? Like, they're here because the price tag is what it is, and the name on the degree is what it is. Prestige without the price, I think, is the new marketing campaign we're launching here pretty soon. Hopefully, I'm not getting ahead of anybody's thing here, but saying that. But, I think that a place like this offers an opportunity to so many different types of kids that have an opportunity. So you get to coach a different type of kid here than maybe you would at some other places that I've worked at, quite frankly, or even that I went to school. I always make the reference to the last school I coached at was a place called Ohio Wesleyan University. It's a great high academic school, and just north of Columbus, and it's the type of place where the people who go there, and this is not a knock on them at all. I think Ohio Wesleyan's a great place. But the people who go there are probably going to be successful and go on, and we're going to go to college anyway, right? These aren't people that doesn't necessarily happen here. So right away, the kids appreciate the opportunity a little bit more here than any place that I've been. So that's part of it. But I think of it, too, is it's just constantly reminding them what we're doing, that you're doing the thing that you dreamed of when you were a little kid, that you're constantly communicating that, because it is difficult, right? Like, it's hard to make that transition going from, high school to college or junior, making the changes that people make now in their lives as they go to these things. Anytime you make a big transition, that's always, the toughest part of any change, right? And so, a lot of times you'll see freshmen hit a wall and things like that, but, I think, like I said, that if we're constantly building in things to help them adapt, that this tends to be a lot more enjoyable for them. And then we try to build our roster in a way where everybody can see their future, so that, that's not to say every kid who's ever played here has worked out. I mean, everybody's got challenges in their own lives and injuries and things like that happen. But, we try to make sure that we're not building a roster of 40 guys the way that some schools have to do it. Like, sure. I'm not knocking on that either. But, people here, they come here, even if they're not playing right away, they can kind of see where their future is and how they fit in. And I think that makes it a lot more enjoyable too. And then I think the last part is the way you recruit. Like, you get the one thing that I messed up early in my career here is that, the talent we always got was good. Didn't necessarily get the personality types that, one, I enjoyed coaching, and two, that enjoyed playing together. And now we really focus on making sure that all our kids are self-motivated kids that are good kids and that are good teammates and that are going to be happy for somebody else's success. And I think that makes it a lot more enjoyable. And in this day and age where people are transferring out left and right in every school, and we've had a little bit of that here too. We've only lost 8 guys in my 13 years that have ended up on somebody else's roster. And I think a lot of
that's pretty good when you think about the big picture.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that is a credit to the place that I work, the people that we're able to bring in, and making sure that we're focusing on the right personality types to keep that fun so that they enjoy, being a part of our program and the things that we do here.
Now, as the athletic director, let's talk about making sure the environment for your teammates, a.k.a. the guys and gals who work for you, your coaches, how do you make sure they are having fun and they are likewise sending the same message to their student athletes that athletics needs to be fun, and here's the reason why. So let's talk about transitioning as the head coach of your staff.
Yeah, I think the process in a lot of ways is the same. Is you try to hire people, one, that work well together. And, we had Kara Warner-Sanders in here, our former head athletic trainer, in here earlier, and, she was talking about the work culture. And I think Coach Bruce, as the athletic director, is really the person who laid the groundwork for that. Like, he really set a culture here of this is how we're going to work together, and this is, the type of person we're looking for that we bring in as coaches and as, administrators and everything that we do here in our athletic department. So I think it starts there and making sure that we've got people who are like-minded, who are self-motivated, that can operate on their own, that are going to get along well here within the office. Because, it's like any other work environment. You're here every single day with the same people. You want to make sure that you enjoy the people you work with, right? So I think that's where it starts. And then, giving them the opportunity to be the best that they're capable of being. And every place has its challenges, and certainly we're the same. But, a lot of my focus as athletic director the last couple of years has been, all right, how do we make IU South Bend serve the greater university within a way that also benefits us, and makes it enjoyable for us to do our job. So, some of those things are not the flashiest things in the world. Like this summer, we've really focused on safety within our facility, and there are things that aren't people going to really notice, like removing permanent benches so that people don't trip over them. Putting college three-point lines down on our recreational courts so that we can hold practices over there so that our athletic trainers don't have to stay till 10 o'clock at night with practices. Putting a wall in front of our weight room, so that balls aren't flying off into there while some baseball players trying to deadlift 500 pounds and, little things like that aren't going to go completely noticed. But at the same time, provide a function and let people do things in a professional way that also gives them some balance in their lives. And hopefully we're doing a good job of that, and there's still a long way for us to go. But I think for the most part, our coaches and our employees like working here.
Okay, direction of IU South Bend athletics. Let's talk about big picture stuff. I mean, there are some schools that are adding sports. There are some schools that are dropping sports. You look across the landscape, there are schools that are in the NEI that are closing. We've seen one of the schools up in Wolverine Hoosier Athletic Conference is closing after this year. We've seen this a lot in the Chicagoland Collegiate Athletic Conference just since I've been broadcasting sports here over the course of the last 2 decades or so. I tell you what, you really, really need a new map on the way it's happened. So let's talk about navigating through all those changes, and let's talk about the overall direction of athletics here for the Titans.
Yeah, since I've taken over, my goal has been to build on, one, the culture that Coach Bruce created, because he did an unbelievable job of that, and how do we take that forward within the greater mission of the university. So I've really tried to narrow it down to 3 things, and that's, 1, to help our administration understand our value within the university, and 2, to help our coaches kind of have some direction on what we're trying to accomplish here. So the first thing that we talked about earlier is we want to be an extension of the educational mission of Indiana University. We want to prepare our athletes for when they leave here, are they best equipped for whatever phase is coming next in their life. And obviously there's a lot of things that you can learn in the classroom, but there's a lot of things that you don't learn in the classroom, and we want to try to be, the next resource for that. The second thing that we've talked about is we want to be, we want to enhance the student experience, not just for our athletes, but for the entire university, how we build on that. And that's something that we're currently kind of figuring out what that looks like. But how do we use athletics as a hub for everything that's going on campus? So maybe that's student interns to help out with our administrative side of things who have an interest in business administration, or having students that help run our facility that have an interest in that sort of thing, that have an interest in maybe the communication side of things. There's a lot of different things you can do. You can build events around and all that stuff. So we're really trying to focus on that. And then the third thing is we're trying to raise the profile of our university. Any kind of marketing, right, is just telling stories. And, the physics professor, we've got a lot of great professors here, that wins an award. It's a one-day story, and then, you don't hear about him again for other. Whereas every single time we have a game, every time we have a human interest story within one of our athletes, we have hundreds, if not thousands, of stories to tell here that can kind of bring light to the great place that we have here to work, and the opportunity that we have for our students. So, I think that, the best I've ever heard is Pete Bavacqua over at Notre Dame. I heard him speak last year, and he said, their football team, for as great a university as they have at Notre Dame, their football team is the front porch for the university. That if their football team does well, that enhances the physics department, that enhances giving, that enhances everything else that's going on that they're trying to do as a university. And, if the football team's doing well, everybody else's situation gets better. And so that's what we want to be. We still have to build to that. A lot of our sports are young and don't have the resources to compete in that level yet. But, when our men's and women's basketball teams, or our volleyball team, several years ago, or even our baseball team, the run that they made, they do, when they do well, that brings eyes to the university. And that, even though obviously on a much smaller scale than a place like Notre Dame, that enhances our value within the community and things like that. So it's an ongoing process, but those are really the things that we're really focusing on here. And, hopefully by the time this airs, we'll have somebody, an assistant athletic director in place to help us with some of those things. I think we've got an opportunity here to kind of look ahead and see, hey, where is college athletics going, and then build off of that.
You and I are both big-time college football fans. I left the college football beat after a quarter of a century and kind of work on a wide variety of other topics. So I'm only watching games these days on television. It's alarming. What we're seeing is alarming, the stories that we're hearing, and there's alarming the way that the game has changed from pay to play to this, that, and the other. And it's filtering down even into the NAI level, and believe it or not, it's even filtering down. The transfer stuff is filtering down to the high school. One ironic story that I came across just recently, that because of the Indiana High School Athletic Association making some transfer rules that would encompass high school sports, that a student athlete has an opportunity to transfer now and not lose any eligibility. And I know one particular student athlete decided he was going to transfer from school A to school B, but all of a sudden, when he didn't get the jersey number that he wanted at school B, he decided he wasn't going to transfer. So athletes are fickle, situations are fickle. It's alarming to me that the game that I fell in love with, that we both fell in love with, the schools that we fell in love with, athletically speaking, have all these different things. So I just opened a potpourri of a lot of different things to talk about there.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the NIL, transfers, and the landscape of big-time college athletics, because it eventually is going to affect you, and it's going to affect the athletes that you're going to be recruiting. So I give you a big canvas to paint on here, Coop. So tell me what you think now.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack there, but yeah, I mean, it's completely changed everything. I mean, even at our level, not that there's a lot of schools dishing out money on a regular basis for NIL opportunities, but the fact that those even exist, it has completely changed the way the athletes think coming out of this. And in some ways, you don't blame them, right? If like a kid has an opportunity to go make $1 million playing quarterback at Ohio State, he should go make $1 million playing quarterback at Ohio State. So. Indiana's got a good football team too. You guys can come here. But national champs. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that as an IU employee, but yeah, go Buckeyes. My point is what's happened now. There's such an emphasis on winning, right? And there always has been. That's not going to change. But that these guys at the highest levels have so much pressure on them to win. Like people are calling for Ryan. I'll use Ohio State as an example. People are calling for Ryan Day's head. He's got the best win percentage in the history of college football because he hasn't beat that other school, enough. But this guy just won a national championship, and there's still people who doubt whether or not he should be the coach there. That's the environment we've created, and what that's done now is those coaches that need to win, to keep their jobs and to keep the lifestyles that they've created for their families and stuff like that. They aren't going to rely on that kid who's got to develop. They're going to go get the kid at the lower level, at the mid-major or whatever, that has, shown that they can compete at the highest level. Okay, so they go get that kid. Well, now that mid-major school's got to replace their kid with somebody too. So maybe they're getting the kid that drops down that hasn't performed, or where it started to impact us is now, that mid-major school is going to come down to the low major, the NAI, the Division II level, and take those kids. And, it happened with our own team, but you see it, just about everywhere. And so now those kids that probably weren't on full rides and certainly weren't getting tens of thousands of dollars are now, well, I should take that opportunity. And you certainly don't blame the kid. So now that's meant that all of us, our rosters are getting built later and later. Matter of fact, we're in August now, and I finally have ours finalized, I think, but a lot of it is those kids are waiting out those opportunities, and a lot of them are right to, because they're eventually going to get them once all that trickle down happens. And that culture that gets broadcast over, social medias and everything else, that everything's under such a spotlight that now that trickles down into high schools and things like that, that you're seeing it now. And now that opportunity has been created, in large part to avoid court cases and things like that are more complicated and above my, pay grade. But these states make these laws in order for kids to transfer. And so what's happened is everybody thinks that the grass is greener. Not everybody, but a lot of people think that the grass is greener, or that they're entitled to something or whatever it happens to be, and it's just easier to go to the next place that values me in some way or supposedly values me more, or whatever it happens to be. And it's it's not things that don't happen in our real world, right? Like if the Cavs go and offer me $2 million to be their head coach tomorrow, yeah, I'm probably out of here. That's going to change my family's situation and all that stuff. So it's not like there aren't parallels to that in real life. But what doesn't get seen is everything that led up to me getting the head coaching job at IU South Bend and understanding the value of, being happy and having a family life and all that other stuff. That's the stuff that you often don't see. And because that stuff isn't the stuff that ends up on social media, that it's not flashy, it's not, it doesn't get views, it doesn't get likes, that the younger people don't see that quite as much. So that's where things are a little dangerous, and that we really have a communication problem, I think, that NIL has created. That are really making things difficult for everybody involved in that. And, what is the landscape for the recruits wondering, what is the landscape? What are my opportunities? The coaches are wondering, what is my roster going to be? Is it right to help this kid move on, or should I be fighting to keep him here, and all that stuff? And those are questions we don't know the answers to yet. And it's one of those things we're just going to have to adapt to, because it's not going anywhere. One
of the things that we're going to do on the Scott Cooper Show throughout the course of the year is Coop's going to be bringing in some of our coaches as well as some of our student athletes here on the Scott Cooper Show. And we got a couple new shticks, if you will, to be able to pass along. And I'm going to give a couple of them out to Coop here really quick right now. All right, we're going to do the Reader's Digest condensed version of this for our listening audience. Okay. you hypothetically only get a chance to listen to a half a dozen songs for the rest of your life. You're stuck on an island someplace in the middle of nowhere, and all you have is 6 songs. Pick out 1 or 2 of those songs that you absolutely want to have to listen to, and they're a must listen to in your life.
Man, mine are going to be all over the place. The first one that comes to mind is Semi-Charmed Life by Third Eye Blind. It's a song that was in like the mid-'90s that, honestly, the content isn't great in hindsight, but I still enjoy the song a whole lot. I saw them in concert in whatever year that was. I can't even remember anymore, but saw them in concert, and it's one of those things that you just kind of get taken back to the experience, right? So that's one. I don't know why, but Cecilia always gets stuck in my head. Like, that's just, a song that I could sing all day, and, always get, Otis Redding, Dock of the Bay, another one that just like, I just enjoy the song. Sweet Caroline, Neil Diamond, Olivia and I, my daughter Olivia and I love to sing that song. She thinks
there you go.
She thinks the bump part is like the greatest thing in the world, so you get taken there. I don't know what's that. I'm going to stop there.
All right, so there's the same situation. If your movie channel is only going to give you 2 movies for the rest of your life, and you're a big-time movie buff.
Oh, yeah,
a lot of people don't know that Coop in his quiet time, he gets away, and he'll go to the movies by himself just to kind of chill out and kind of do his thing. All right, 2 movies. You only get 2 movies the rest of your life. What are they 2 movies?
The rest of my life. Good Will Hunting would be number 1. And, man alive, the second movie, there's a lot. I got too many choices here. Boy, I'd have trouble coming up with a second one that I just
okay, let's move.
I'm going to say The Sandlot. We're going The Sandlot. The Sandlot.
Okay. TV shows.
TV shows. See, I got a list for this. So
okay,
I actually keep this.
So you've only got a couple TV shows you can watch. What are they?
Let's see. Let's go Modern Family, Ted Lasso, The West Wing, and we'll go with The Office for now.
Okay. Final question. I'll give you a wrap-up. Okay. You get a chance to go to breakfast, lunch, and dinner with 3 different people. From the beginning of time to where you're at right now. It could be somebody.
Of time.
So it could be somebody who has passed away, who's from way back in the history of the United States of America, to modern day, or to someone who has impacted your life in your own life. Who are the 3 people? Who are you going out to breakfast with?
Oh man, now I can't give a superficial answer. That's just people that have impacted my own life. Well, I mean, obviously, I'd start with breakfast with my grandparents.
Okay. There you go. That's a great one.
The 3 that I knew, anyway. I just breakfast was the thing we did in our family, so I'll start with that.
Okay. How about lunch?
Lunch. Let's. I'm not going to go nearly as superficial there. Let's go Woody Hayes, because all the stories I've heard of the stories he could tell, I'd love to just sit down and hear. And as a big Buckeyes fan, I think that'd be a whole lot of fun. And then third one. Man, I'll tell you, I was listening to a podcast the other day, and I actually had this thought. And Mark Cuban was talking on the podcast, and obviously he's a wildly intelligent guy. IU alum. I appreciate that. Yeah, let's make sure we slip that in. Right, one for the team here. He had a way of talking about really complex things in a way that was really easy to understand, and I thought that was really interesting, and I'd love to hear more. Type of thing. And Mark, hey, if you're listening, we are totally available. You're welcome to stop by anyway. Again, keep it back.
So Mark Cuban is your dinner guy.
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay, all right. Once again, you can join us here every month, right here on Regional Radio Sports for the Scott Cooper Show. We've got some special guests planned for you. School's getting underway here in the next few days. I want to wish all the Titans best of luck as they have some fun this year on the South Bend campus. Special thanks again, as always, to Tanner Camp and Andrew Kirksey, our producers and directors, respectively. For Scott Cooper, I'm Paul Condry. Thanks for joining us here on the Regional Radio Sports Network.